This is Dr. Justin Traveler. This is Dr. Run, Think, Pray. And today we have a lot of interesting things to talk about. We are mostly going to be covering digestion today. Now, as you know, the philosophy, the idea of why I wanted to do this recording, this information, is to help people be physically, mentally, and spiritually well. When we look at physical, mental, and spiritual, we always start with the physical. And really, if you want to talk about any aspect, for example, a lot of people, when they think of spiritual, they think of going to church. That's an easy example. So in church, if you're trying to pay attention and listen and feel the Spirit, feel something of magnitude. If you've ever had a cold or had a sore neck or a low back problem, my question to you is just how comfortable, how much spiritual upliftment were you able to get from that? And my guess is not very much, or maybe even zero. If that's been my experience when I've struggled with things like that. And so we have to address these things one at a time. I thought that we would talk about digestion today. We also, in the last episode, we talked about the phases of life. So we talked about the athlete phase and the warrior phase, the statement phase and the spirit phase, all those different phases. But as you remember, if you listen to that, we talked about being physically, mentally, and spiritually healthy within each one of those phases. And so regardless of what phase you're in, regardless of whether you want to grow physically, mentally, or spiritually, today we're going to lean a little bit more towards the physical aspect and specifically digestion. Now, for those of you who don't know, who didn't read my description, don't know much about me, I am a chiropractor. Hopefully that you look positively upon that. I also have a master's degree in sports science and rehab. I've worked with a lot of athletes and just worked with a lot of people in general. There's an interesting thing that I like to say is that when it comes to the physical aspect of your health, your digestive system is the brain of your physical health. And so you really need to address digestion. If it's not an issue for you, then you consider yourself blessed. If it is an issue in any way, then you know how it can affect your physical, mental, and spiritual health. That it really, if you're not healthy that way, if you're having digestive issues, or if you're not digesting your food properly, then it becomes an issue. And so I'm going to be giving some tips. The interesting thing when it comes to digestion, I mean, I've got some information here. I just pulled up some different books and things. It can get really broad. So I just looked. So I work with some different companies. One that I work with a lot is Standard Process. Plug in right here. But I looked at under their digestion, and just under digestion and supplements, they had 27 different supplements under a number of different categories: upper GI, lower GI. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff. And so when I bring out that broad topic of digestion, the specifics can get very specific for your specific problem. So we're going to be covering things kind of generally today, and at least get you thinking about if maybe you're not where you want to be physically, regardless of what phase again you're in, if you want to look at that digestion. So the first thing that we're going to do is talk about maybe some of the negatives, some things that you may be doing to shoot yourself in the foot. We'll talk about some free things that you can do, some things that don't cost very much, some supplements, some tests, and then we'll get into kind of the end part where we talk about the mental and spiritual and not just the physical of that. So, and again, these are tips, general tips. If you have specific questions, you can ask me. You can also see your practitioner and ask those specific questions, but start thinking about your health and specifically about your digestion if you want to increase that. So the first thing that I said that we're going to talk about is the negatives. Okay, I don't like getting negative. The thing that I always say is you should be for something, fight for something, not against it. If there's a battle against something, it just doesn't seem to go as well, but you should be for something. Now, having said that, you just, you don't want to destroy your digestion before, as you're trying to get started. I had the opportunity to go to a seminar. The speaker in the seminar was a European surgeon, so he was a surgeon in Europe. It's been a while. I'm sorry I don't have the specifics of his name. I could go look that up, but I just remember, so this is off my memory. And of all the things that he said, and he talked about a lot of different things, so maybe it's sad, but as they say, if you get one thing from your speaker, then that's a good thing. And so he was talking, in the end there was some questions, and one of the questions that came up, they said, hey, over in Europe, is there something that we do in the United States that's funny, that maybe the European doctors look and say, what are they thinking, and why did they do it that way? And it was interesting. He sat for a minute and he thought, and then he said, really, I think the thing that over here in Europe, at least in my opinion, that you American physicians and doctors do that is really weird, and we just don't understand it exactly. And again, this was his opinion, but he said was antacids. Antacids don't make a whole lot of sense because it shoots your digestion in the foot. Again, you stop it before it even can get going. And I want to give a brief overview. Again, this is real general. There are some people that produce too much acid, and that's just the way that it is. But he threw out some percentages, like in the 90 and 95% of the people that are getting antacids, blocking the acid, actually don't need it. Now, again, this is me spouting off what he said out of my memory. But I remember that being very significant, thinking, wow, that's interesting that there would be that was the number one thing. And so here's what he kind of explained, and what I've understood, and it's made a lot of sense, and it's helped a lot of patients that have been on antacids. So essentially, they say that most of the people who have heartburn, and that's why people generally take an antacid, they have heartburn because they think, the acid's coming up and it's burning them, and so they're thinking, I've got to get the acid down. It feels like an acidic burn, and so I just want to get that down. Well, so he said it's actually tends to be the opposite problem, that it's too little acid. And that may not make sense. So here I'll explain it. So take especially meat. So say you have a big steak and you eat that steak, and one day you ate that, and in your stomach you don't have enough acid. And so you eat that steak, it goes down into your stomach, and there's supposed to be a lot of acid in your stomach to chomp that steak up and push it down into the intestines, and so that you can digest it and get the good from that steak. But essentially what happens is you eat that steak, it goes down, it's not acidic enough, and so it sits down there and it putrefies, it goes rotten, and that kind of grosses some people out. But that rotten food, that putrefied food, then starts to irritate, comes up in the form of an acid. And so on the very first time when you take that antacid, you took the antacid and you said, I'm going to take this antacid because it's burning. And then it just starts that cascade, that spiral that you always have to take it. And that's kind of what happens. People will say, well, I took this antacid and now I always have to, because if I don't, then it burns me. And so that's what he's saying. He said, the majority of the people that are taking antacids actually have too little acid instead of too much. And what they need is to acidify their stomach. That seems like a scary idea to some. And again, consult your physician. I don't want to throw out generalities, but if you've been prescribed an antacid, you may want to talk to a different physician, maybe get a second opinion on that, because they would probably say that I'm wrong and crazy. But I've had a lot of experience in this, and this is what this European doc had said. And so what he said is that we actually need to acidify the body so that it can digest, so that it can chomp up that steak, chomp up the food, and help you. And so that's why I say, number one, the negative, and we want to get past this. Don't ruin it. And there are some people, he also said, there is a percentage that need it, but the majority don't. And so antacids. Now you're asking, well, I've been on these antacids and it burns if I don't. So then we're going to get to the next part, which I said is free remedies. To me, the number one free remedy, and this goes right along with the antacids, is apple cider vinegar. For anyone that is not familiar with apple cider vinegar, it's amazing. It's great, and you see it in the stores. You see it out there, so you kind of know. And if you have not ever tried apple cider vinegar, you may be thinking, what's with all these bottles and what's with the vinegar? And so what it essentially does is it acidifies your digestive system. It helps you so that when you eat that food, it goes down into an acidic environment that can eat up the steak and eat up the food and then digest it. And so that's why apple cider vinegar is really is popular, because it stimulates the digestive system so that you don't have to go take the antacid and you don't ever get caught in that spiral. Now, if you do take antacids, again, consult your physician. Some people will do it cold turkey. What I usually suggest to people is you're trying to get off, be careful with it, number one, especially with the antacids again. But if you just want to stimulate and better your digestion, the formula that I usually have given is a half a cup of water with a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. And you can do that on all different forms. I personally just take it at the end of the day, just once, and I've been luckily blessed with good digestion. I'm happy with my digestion for the most part. There have been times when I've run into problems. So at the end of the day, half a cup of water with a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. Now, if you're really struggling with a lot of digestive issues, if you're again trying to figure out what to do with this antacid and you need to experiment, it may take some time. You may need to be patient and again, talk with your physician, dabble with the percentages of use an antacid for a little bit, but then take the apple cider vinegar. To get more aggressive, though, you will do a half a cup of water with a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar on top of your meal. So after you've eaten, you have it there, take the apple cider vinegar, goes down, chomps up the food, helps to digest that. So you can take it more often than just one time a day. You can take it on top of the meal. I have heard some people take it before. A lot of that's opinion, but I found that the patients that have had the most success, half a cup of water with a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, and I guess that's not free, but it's next to free. It costs almost nothing. Apple cider vinegar is very inexpensive. It lasts a long time because you're mixing it and diluting it with the water. If you can't handle the taste, I know there are some places that sell capsules. Or you can sweeten it a little bit with some organic honey, especially local honey. That would be helpful. But those are some ideas that are next to free that you can do that will really help to stimulate the digestive system. All right. So then after the apple cider vinegar, we can get into some supplements. Now, again, I work with, and I showed you the standard process. We got the standard process, book here. There's a number of other supplements. Great. If it works for you, then use it. I like food-based supplements. That's my personal opinion. That's what I found worked the best for me, worked the best for the majority of the patients that I use, food-based supplements. But there's a ton. Again, 27 supplements for digestion, and that can be debated. There may even be some that they use. I just want to introduce you to a few. Again, we're talking tips, little basic things that I've used on a regular basis that I can suggest to some patients, and you can find someone that in your area, or if you're in the St. George, Utah area, you can come and talk to us about these supplements, but just find something that works for you. The first one that I wanted to talk about as far as supplements, got to find them here, is Zypan. Okay, Zypan is, from what I understand, and I've talked to some people in standard process, they say that's the number one seller, Zypan. So there you go, digestion. It's the brain of your physical health. Zypan to me is kind of your general. If you just want to generally take a supplement for your digestion, is Zypan. I kind of lean it again towards that acidic. It's an acid. It helps to digest that food. And this is again a real general, but I say if it's proteins again that you're trying to chomp up, I lean towards proteins. If you have a difficult time digesting proteins, meats, things that way, lean towards the Zypan. And that's a suggestion that we've given in our office oftentimes. So just in general or proteins, Zypan. Now the next one is we look at macronutrients. So a lot of people will have problems with different macronutrients. So proteins, carbohydrates, fats. Carbohydrates, I find that in general, again, patients that have a difficult time with carbohydrates, we do lactic acid yeast wafers or tablet. These are the wafers. So lactic acid yeast wafers. Fermented food, essentially, anything that's fermented helps to digest in general, and I think specifically with carbohydrates and from what I've studied. So again, 27 supplements, we're just talking about a few. And so in general, lactic acid yeast wafers, that's something that we've used to help to digest carbohydrates. So if carbohydrates are your biggest thing, vegetables, fruits, breads, and a lot of that's debatable too. We're not going to talk about specific foods to avoid. We can talk about that in future episodes, but for right now we're just talking in general. Carbohydrates, lactic acid yeast wafers have been very helpful for many of my patients. And the last is fats. Fats, in my opinion, I like beta food. Sounds like fish food, I don't know, but it's mostly beets. So if you want the food, I always say, beets for your gallbladder and for your liver. So gallbladder, it releases those bile salts, so that the beta food is to support your gallbladder. And so if you're trying to get the fat digestion, beta food is a great supplement that I actually use on a regular basis. I'm a runner, and there's a lot of talk about beets and things that way, and so I like the beta food. And so those are kind of the supplements. Again, in general, there's hundreds of companies, hundreds of different from Standard Process, from any of them. So, but to find one that works for you, and there are some that are very specific. So we wanted to talk about just some tips in general. Those are 3 supplements that can be very helpful. And now I want to talk a little bit about tests. Things, again, general. There's tons of tests that you can do out there. There's hair analysis, there's blood work, there's all sorts of different. I wanted to talk today about two different tests that have been helpful for a lot of my patients. Again, if you're trying to just in general increase your digestion and help with things. And these are a little maybe outside the box, or if you haven't heard of them, maybe some of you have. They've just been helpful, and I've taken both of them. And so now I need to find my my tests. Oh, they're here behind me. Let me grab them. All right, so we're talking about 2 different tests that are helpful in trying to figure out digestion for you. Now the first one, and again, multiple companies out there. I'll say the ones that I've been using just because that's what I'm aware of. I'm sure there's a whole bunch, but we use a company called Pathway Genomics to do a genetic test, okay? And these are some of the test results, my test results from Pathway Genomics that can help. And the reason why I like it is because it's a little more specific. So you take this swab. I grabbed the test too. So here's our little. In our office, we use these little tests. You can get online at Pathway. Let me see. It's pathway.com if you want to order it wherever you are in the world or in the United States. And essentially, the reason why I really like this is it gives you specifics for what you're looking for. There's 3. I looked up 3 different tests. There's the fitness, the sport IQ, the fit IQ, and the pathway fit. Now the one that I think, if you're just looking in general, the pathway fit covers the most bases. It's also the most expensive. Again, if you're online, it's $299, so $300 test. You could, the nutrition, if it's just nutrition period that you need, the fit IQ would work very well. Also, that gives nutrition, fitness, and well-being. That's $129. So a relatively inexpensive test. It's a cheek swab. It reads your genes, and then it gives you information, what diet you should specifically be eating. Now, they kind of break it down. I guess if you had a complaint, they could get more detailed, but it's helpful. They break it down into what they call a balanced diet, Mediterranean diet, low carb, or low fat. I think if I read on the website, they're talking neutral too. They may have done a little bit extra since I've taken this, but they they give you a diet that's helpful for you, and they kind of say these are the things that may be problematic, these are things that you want to avoid. I took the bigger one, so the Pathway Fit, that gave me also exercises that I should do. It gives me some foods, different digestive things, nutrients that I may genetically be predisposed to becoming deficient in. And so I thought that was really helpful for me. Now, the reason why I think that's very helpful for me, again, I have what I consider a pretty healthy digestive system. And so in general, it's kind of, to maintain, this is the way to go. And I found that patients that have a pretty good digestive system, we give them the genetic test. They take that. It's very helpful, and they can start to get even more specific. It even gives you diet recommendations. So then they give me all the diet plan. There's all sorts of pages in here, and they even give some recipes and different calorie things, and it's very, very helpful. I thought it was great. So Pathway Genomics, for that one, you can look it up, pathway.com. I really enjoy that, like that. I'm going to set that over here. All right. Then the second test, and again, hundreds of tests. I understand that, and we have a bunch in here. I'm giving some that I think in general, if we were to give general tips. Now, this test, in my opinion, is for people that are a little, have more digestive issues. So there's a company, I like to listen to Tom Bilyeu, and he has his where the owner of Viome. So there's a company called Viome. There's a lot of cool things. You can get it. It comes with an app. You buy a year-long subscription to the Viome. It's a fecal matter test, so hopefully you're okay with, it's a poop test. Yeah, you got to do a little stool sample. No, it's not like big scoops. I mean, it's just a little teeny tiny bit, and you can handle that. But the interesting part is they're checking your microbiome, the bacteria within your body. Really, really cool. Now, the reason why, in my opinion, if you're talking cost-wise, so the cost on that is $399, so $400 for this per year. That's what it was, at least when I took it recently, a few months ago. And for that cost, it reads your microbiome, and it tells you a little more specific foods, like eat this food, don't eat this food. Now, for me, again, those two tests for me came back very similar. And I think that's true, again, because I don't have a ton of digestive issues. But from what I've been able to tell, and we have, again, fairly new in some of that stuff for me, it may, it's a little better for people who have had digestive issues. That's my opinion on that. And it has a ton of readings. I mean, I'm looking at my test right here. You got all sorts of it tells all the bacteria that's in your system, and some people might get grossed out from that. It also gives RNA, and then in the end it gives you your superfoods, which some of mine, again, in general, and this is one that I gave, apple cider vinegar was on my list of just superfoods for me. Again, that's a general thing, so in general I'm pretty healthy, so that wasn't surprising to me. And then it also says foods that I can eat generously, as much food as I want, what I should kind of eat somewhat sparingly, and then a few foods, and there was a few. It was kind of a weird list, if I remember right, like raisins or something that was on my list of foods to avoid. So they've got indulge, enjoy. These are foods to indulge in, foods to enjoy, and then minimize, and then the last one shows foods to avoid. And on my list, again, it was interesting. The foods for me to avoid were raisins, agave nectar, and lard. So based on my microbiome, and I understand as well the microbiome shifts, so that's why you do a year-long subscription to that. You can have other tests. I believe the retests are $199. And so every few months, and that's also an interesting thing when, we're not talking specifically about diets, but that's why your diet doesn't always work forever. It may work at first and then stop working. Your microbiome shifts, it changes. So that I really like that idea. And so I think that people with more digestive issues, the Viome. And again, we do have, and I'll try and get this posted. Okay, listen, guys, that I'm just a guy with a mic in front of me. Look, I put this little thing on my mic only because the people that I'm looking at, they're telling me to do that. I'm not a techie person, okay? So I'm going to try and post it. I'm hopefully going to be able to say that, hey, look over here, and it's going to pop up. But just in case it doesn't, and I can't figure that out, and I just want to post this, or if you're listening to it on the podcast, I'm going to hold it up here to the screen. All right, so www.viome.com/ref, R-E-F code, =, and then all caps experts for our company, Healthology experts. Yeah, I'm backwards here. Healthology experts. So again, you can go on there, and that gives you a little discount code, I think. Again, I set it up, so it may or may not give you a discount, but I like the system. And it's a really good company that I've really liked. So in general, when we're talking tests, hundreds of tests, again, those are two really cool tests for just tips where you can say either based upon your genes or based upon your microbiome, your gut bacteria, that can be very helpful to help you. Now, last but not least, again, this is Dr. Run, Think, Pray. So what we've talked about today is mostly physical because it's digestion, but there is a mental and a spiritual aspect to the food that you eat. And so right now, and in general, this is again in general, I want you to think that the food that you eat, one of your main purposes, other than to just bring joy, food is fun to eat, it should bring joy to your life. And if you have digestive issues, it's not. So to bring joy, and then another great thing is to eliminate stress. So there's three kinds of stress that are in your life. The three stressors: emotional, right? So if people are stressed, that's what we usually think of as stress. And see, here I'm getting to be better at looking at the camera. Sorry, I've been looking down. So those of you who are watching this on YouTube are like, why does he keep looking down? Because I'm looking at myself. I got to remember to look at the camera. But to eliminate stress. So emotional stress is what we usually think of. That's, my spouse is stressing me out, or my coworker, and I just have this emotional stress. The next is physical stress, and that's if you work out too hard. Oftentimes we see a lot of adrenal burnout in people who maybe work out too much, or if they have to do too much bending, lifting, then that's a physical stress. The last is chemical stress. That's the food that we eat. And so we want to avoid that chemical stress. If the food that you're putting into your body, even if you think it's healthy, if it's creating inflammation into your gut, it's a stressful thing. Okay? So when you're eating, I want you to think of eliminating stress. There's some really interesting things with that, though, because when you're thinking about eliminating stress, and I'm not giving you freedom to just eat junk food whenever you want, but think of it, if what you eat, so say if I'm on a diet and I splurge and eat a piece of cake, if I'm freaking out about eating that cake, now I've stressed out my digestive system with the sugar and everything else that's junk that's going into my body, but I'm also emotionally stressed. And so what I like to say is try not to stress about it. I mean, do your very best. There's a lot of people that intuitive eating. I know there's books written about eating to your intuition, that to follow what your body is what you think you should eat with knowledge in mind. Find out what's good for you. Find out what's healthy for you, what's not healthy for you, and eat the stuff that's good for you and stay away from the bad. The other thing, when we look at it from a spiritual standpoint, there's a lot of interesting studies showing that the stress, so the inflammation levels in food that's been prayed over, so that gratitude, showing gratitude for the food. So again, I'm not telling you can go, get a bunch of junk food and then pray over it and it's going to be good for you. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that food that's been prayed over tends to have less of an inflammatory effect upon our body. So pray over your food. Be grateful for the food that you have. And spiritually, start thinking. Be grateful. Say, thank you for whatever higher power for me. That's God, Jesus Christ, whatever gave me that that power to bring me to do this recording, to work with patients, whatever it is that you do. Be grateful for that. And don't, if you have a splurge, you eat something bad, don't load the emotional stress on top of the physical. Have control over yourself, healthy consequences. So, no shame, but healthy guilt, as I've heard. Healthy guilt is okay. So say, all right, I messed up. I'm going to do better. That's not what I should be eating. Don't stress out your spouse. We can talk about that later. I try and, my wife, we have 5 kids. And so for her to try and prepare the meal for everybody and then try and do a separate one for me, because she does very good at trying to be as healthy as she can and feed 5 kids and herself and me and fit all those. So many times, even if I'm trying to sit here and think, this probably isn't the best, healthiest thing in the world that I could be eating, I'm grateful. Thankful for my wife that she would fix that meal for me or whoever's fixing it. And grateful that they would be able to do that. And so I want you all to just, when you think of digestion, yes, physical is number one. Find out what works best for you. There's a number of different diets. I'm not a huge fan of just specific diets, and again, because your microbiome changes, your body changes. But to find out for you what's healthy, what's not. We can talk about diets in the future, but study it out for yourself. And then try not to stress about it. Use little things. Use those hints like apple cider vinegar to increase your digestion. Try some supplements that may be helpful for you, and or try some tests so that you can find out specifically for you, based upon your microbiome or your genetic predispositions, what's going to be the best food for you, and then just be grateful. Be grateful for what you have. I'm blessed. I hope and pray that you are as well. And I'm excited that we could have this episode and talk about digestion. And this is Dr. Traveler with Dr. Run, Think, Pray, and I am signing out. Guys, thanks for checking out Dr. Run, Think, Pray. Please like, please subscribe, comment below. If you have any questions, let me know. And always remember to be healthier today than you were yesterday. Be healthier tomorrow than you were today. And this is Dr. Traveler signing out.